There are several ways in Marvelous Design that you can use to select your garments. The default one is the rectangular selection, but if you have something like this, something that is more like chaos other than something well organized, there are quite a few options that you can choose. So one of them would be, and in order to activate them, you always have to be on the transform pattern tool. So you can click on one of those garments that you have, then right click, and all the way up you have the select all with the same property. And there are a few options in here. So for example, if I click fabric, it will select everything that has the same fabric, and this is the fabric that it's assigned, not the actual material preset. So those are the materials, those are the fabrics. Another option is right click. You can select your garments by layers. So in that case, all the garments that have the same layer will be selected. So that's quite useful if you're, for example, working on a full character and you have pants and you have a shirt and you have a jacket, and for example the jacket is on layer 3 and the shirt is on layer 2 and pants on layer 1, and they're all kind of messy. That's one of the way you can select that. And the other one is the last one. It's basically selecting by the particle distance, and the particle distance is by default is set to 20, and so that's another way of selecting your garments. We can also use the same technique to select some segments on the garments. So for example, if I wanted to select lines, and I have a lot of them, for example, they were some kind of pattern on my garments, the way to do that is simply right click on one of the lines, and then again all the way up there's a select all with the same property, and I will have different options. So this will be basically the segments are going to be selected by those fold options, so strength, angle, and rendering. So if I press fold strength, only those selected that have the same fold strength. If I did something else, if I, for example, pressed fold angle, it will select only those segments that have the same angle. And well, the last one is by select everything by fold rendering, which is basically this option right here. This is very useful. Like I said, if you have a lot of segments happening on your garments, plenty of garments on your character, instead of going all the way and doing this kind of manual work, you can easily select it using the select with the same property option. And that's another way of saying that it's actually, it matters how you create your things. So it's a good practice to, even though you want to have some kind of effect and you want it to be not necessarily precise. So for example, you want to have some kind of folding happening on your garment, and you would go here and you would slide it this way and then perhaps slide it that way, and you just kind of leave it, right? Because you want it to have an effect, and that's it. And then perhaps you would move on to another one and you do the same. You want it to be in reverse and so on. The problem with that is that if you start making a lot of those lines, and if you continue doing this in this manner, there might be a point where you want to select just the specific ones, only the ones that have fold angle to be, well, either folding on itself or folding the other direction. And so it's nice to know that there's an option to actually select those the folds, the segments that you want by using this same property selection. So when you create your lines, when you create your segments, it's always a good practice to be precise about it and to keep it consistent. I find it to be a good practice to keep everything well organized. First of all, it saves some time, but the more important thing to me is that it saves your focus. So this way you don't spend any time trying to select the things that you want. You can simply use the rectangle tool. If you enjoy this content or find it useful, please consider supporting me by buying me a cup of coffee via the link in the description. One way to organize your things is you can move everything manually, and the way it works is that the garments, they snap to the grid. And so if you want to be extra precise about it, you can right click, and there's the grid properties. So if you go inside in here, you will see a bunch of tools in here. So for example, you can turn it off and on in the 3D view, and then you can modify the amount of lines. And there's as well, this is for the 3D view, obviously it says 3D grid, but to the grid you can have the distance set to something, let's say 50. And now you can see the grid behind in the background is more refined, so this means that you can snap your garments with more precision. So that's one way of doing that. It's also a good thing that Marvelous has is this, if you can see those lines. This is the symmetry lines, but if you start moving things around, there's another line appears. It's a purple one, and it's smart guides. That's how they call them. And using those things, you can easily place your elements in the same position. Another way of doing the same thing, more or less, is you can select some elements. So for example, if I want to be able to quickly select some of those things, for example those elastics at the bottom of the hoodie and at the bottom of the sleeves, I can select all of them this way, and then I can just right click, and there's this align option. So the first three are stacking, which means that if I press left, all of them will go to the farthest left element that we have. If I go right, it will do the same to the right one. Center is going to be, well, right in the center of all those the farthest right and the farthest left elements. But the bottom three are the ones that I use more often. So if I press the top, this will basically move them all the way up to the element that is the highest in 2D view. If I press bottom, it will do the opposite, and then there's the middle, which just puts them in the center, in the middle of this distance. And so in this case, it doesn't really matter. I just want them to be aligned in the same level. So I'll press bottom, and I will move them out of the way. So next time, if I want to, for example, change the elastics on my garments, on my clothing, if I want them to be more rigid, for example, instead of clicking and pointing them this way, now they're all lying in a position that is easily accessible to me. So all I can do now is simply use the rectangle tool, select the fabric that I want, and assign them. We can also lock and unlock some elements to help us with selection. So in a situation like this, when you have a lot of internal lines and you want to select the garment itself, from the distance it's not so easy to do. If you, for example, if you click on this garment, in this case it's the sleeve, it will ask you to select one of the lines instead of the actual garment. So the only way to do that would be to select it this way, and this also selects all the lines. But if you want to do it quickly without zooming in and then clicking on an empty space, so the program actually allows you to select the garment instead of all the surrounding elements, we can right click on the canvas, and there's this option that is called lock all internal lines. And if we click that, see those lines, they turn different color, they're grayed out now. And see, if I hovered my my mouse over the sleeve, none of the lines are highlighted. So if I click, it's only the garment that I'm selecting. So this could be a useful and simple, quick way of selecting the garments when you have a lot of things going on it. At the same time, we can do the opposite. And by the way, to undo this this effect, when we right click on the canvas, the option is now unlock all internal lines. So we click that to remove this this effect. If, for example, I wanted to do the opposite, if I wanted to select only the lines and not the garment itself, and I wanted to do it quickly like that, there's an option to lock all the pattern outlines. And if I click that, all the patterns are kind of hidden, and only the lines themselves that stay active. And so in this case, I can do it this way. Select everything, all the internal lines, and then if I wanted to do something to the folds, to the angle of the folds and the strength and all of that, or maybe apply some elastic to it, this is how to do it. Again, this works really well when you have something as complicated as complex as this, when you have a lot of things going on, and not just one single line in the middle of the garment. And the last option is my favorite one. It works on the garments as well as the elements. If you double click on the canvas, you will see that you have a new tool, which is a polygonal selection tool. It's a very, very useful one to select your garments when you have something that is that could be as messy as this arrangement that I have here. And to be able to select segments and especially points, we need to go into the edit pattern selection, and then instead of double clicking somewhere on the canvas, we can click it basically anywhere we want. So if I wanted to select those points, I would double click and I would draw a selection around those points. It works with everything. We can select on the whole garment, we can select just points, and I'm holding shift right now to add the selection. It's a very, very useful feature that is kind of hidden, but once you know it, it's you will use it quite often, I think.